Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerd Mode On, and welcome to episode 7 of Sniper Sundays, a video series where I'll be using anything from DMRs to bolt-action sniper rifles and just kind of going over some information in relation to the item similar to a weapon review. So without further ado, let's jump right into the episode. So for today's episode, we're going to be looking at the QBU-88. Now this is a designated marksman rifle, or more commonly referred to as a DMR. And we're going to be kind of going over some information in relation to the weapon to kind of give you guys an idea of what the weapon has to offer when it comes to the battlefield. So of course, starting off with the rounds per minute, this weapon is going to be clocking in at 310 rounds per minute, which is actually the second fastest DMR in Battlefield 4, which is very impressive by itself. This particular weapon does have the fastest velocity, clocking in at 600 meters a second, which again is a little bit ahead of some of the other ones, but by and large that is going to be the fastest meters a second, so you're going to have to compensate the least for this particular weapon, which could definitely be very beneficial for long range sniping. So of course, transitioning into the overall damage model, you guys will notice that this weapon does perform at 43 damage up until 8 meters. Now of course, after 8 meters you guys will notice that there is a gradual decline of the overall damage that you will be doing at range. Now of course, with that information kind of discussed, I want to let you guys know that the minimum damage that this weapon can occupy is 34 damage, and you'll achieve that at 65 meters. Now, of course, anything after 65 meters is going to be doing a steady 34 damage, which is pretty decent. It is slightly less in comparison to some of the other DMRs in its exact same category, but by and large, it's only differs by just a tiny, minuscule amount of damage, so you really won't be seeing a whole lot of performance differences when it comes down to it. Now, of course, looking at the magazine and reload speeds, this will kind of give us a general idea of how the weapon is supposed to be performing, as well as what information it has for those specific circumstances. So, of course, starting things off with the magazine size, you guys will notice that it occupies a total of 11 rounds. That is a twin round magazine with one in the chamber. You combine those together, of course, you get 11 rounds total. Now, with that information kind of talked about, we can look at the reload numbers, and you guys will notice that these are a little bit higher in comparison to some of the other weapons I've done, but as well as they are pretty compatible with some of the other weapons I've also done as well. So when it comes down to it, let's start off with the short reload clocking in at 2.65 seconds, which is fairly decent and is comparable with some of the other DMRs in its exact same circumstance. Now, of course, if you're unable to keep one round still left in your magazine at the end of your engagement, you are going to be clocking in at a long reload of 3.9 seconds, which is pretty long when it comes down to it. So it's going to be in your best interest to try to maintain at least one round left in your chamber. But if you don't have that ability, you're going to want to make sure you take cover and try to stay low when it comes down to it, because otherwise you're going to be getting surrounded by some opposition. Now, of course, transitioning into the recoil numbers, I would like to let you guys know that, of course, DMRs are classified as a single fire only weapon. You can follow up a shot in quicker succession in comparison to a bolt action rifle. However, compensating for recoil is a little different with DMRs because you are constantly hitting the maximum recoil number every time you pull the trigger. So, of course, it's going to be in your best interest to try to compensate for it as much as possible, but as well as trying to pace out your shots or make your weapon a little bit more classified for the kind of playstyle that you wish to use it for. It's going to be very beneficial when it comes down to it, and it's going to make the game a little bit easier when it comes down to achieving that recoil number, or overall just trying to get the kill by itself. So of course, looking at the horizontal recoil numbers, you guys will notice that it does have a left pole of negative 0.1 as well as a right pole of 0.3. Now, of course, if we look at the vertical side, which is going to be the most present, it's going to be 0.4, which is going to be pretty substantial. Of course, you are going to be hitting the multiplier on your first shot of ×2, so it's always going to be in your best interest to pull down and to the left, because that's going to be a little bit easier for you to try to maintain your crosshair in the middle of the screen. But overall, that's all the information when it comes down to the specific weapon and the characteristics that it brings forward in a statistic manner, of course. Now, of course, if you guys are interested, I can give you some customization recommendations for this weapon to try to outfit your weapon a lot better for the battlefield and hopefully make you a very successful player. So, of course, starting things off in the optics category, I had a lot of success using the red dot sights, may that be the Reflex, the Coyote, or even the Cobra if that's something you're used to. And I found that using it in more of an aggressive manner was fairly decent. Now, of course, this weapon is no assault rifle, so you're still going to have to try to play the conservative game. You're still going to want to use cover as well as trying to use the environment to give you the advantage, especially when it comes down to gunfights that are maybe not always going to be in your best interest. Now, of course, if using a red dot sight doesn't sound too entertaining to you, or maybe you are looking for some advanced information when it comes down to maybe locking down a perimeter or so, then I could definitely recommend using the medium range scopes. I had a lot of success using the M145, which is a 3.4 times optic. Now, of course, I didn't quite enjoy the 4 times maybe as much as I probably should have, but when it came down to it, I thought having a little bit more magnification in comparison to a 1 times was pretty consistent, but of course you guys always have the ability to try out some new scopes and see which one is very useful for yourself. Now of course, changing over to the accessory tab, you guys will notice that there are quite a bit of options here for you to kind of outfit your weapon. Now of course, as normal, I usually recommend going with a laser sight for the DMRs because it allows your hipfire to be a little bit better, considering that the DMRs are not known to be great hipfire machines. But of course, if you do happen to get caught off guard, it's always in your best interest to have something that you might be able to spray them down with, considering that you are using the fastest rounds per minute DMR and the actual category. So that might be pretty beneficial if somebody happens to catch you off guard. Now, of course, changing over to the barrel attachment, this is really going to depend on how you wish to go about it. If you want to be that silent ninja, you want to be behind the opposition at all times and making sure your presence is very ninja-esque, then of course going with a silencer is going to be very beneficial for a DMR. Now, of course, if you want to be somebody that really wants to sit back and lock down a parameter, maybe going with a heavy barrel won't be such a bad idea. Now, of course, that is going to add 50% more recoil, so you're going to want to make sure that you do have a very good shot when it comes down, considering that you know your overall magazine size is very limited, as well as you are going to have 50% more vertical recoil, which in turn can make it a little bit more difficult to kill an oppositional player. But if you do happen to have good aim and your overall ability to sit back and lock down a perimeter is going to be pretty consistent, then of course I would definitely recommend going with that. And finally, looking at the underbarrel attachment, I'm going to recommend to you guys to use the angled grip. I usually recommend this for the DMRs, considering that the weapons are only in single fire mode. And of course, this particular attachment does reduce the overall first shot recoil by 33%. So that's definitely very good for the stability purposes of the DMR category, as well as making yourself a little bit more accurate and a little bit more proficient when it comes down to the main gist of it. But anyway, guys, that has been today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys found some of the information useful. And when it comes down to the main gist of it, guys, I will see you in the next installation of Sniper Sundays. And until then, guys, this is NMO, and I'm going to be signing out. Peace.